My name is Catherine, and I am 31 years old. My boyfriend looked at me and said, "It meant nothing. She was just better at a few things than you." I didn't raise my voice. I just answered, "Then let her be better at covering your bills too." We'd been together just under 2 years and living together for the last 8 months. On paper, things probably looked fine. We shared a downtown apartment. He worked in a creative field where image mattered. I worked in corporate operations, stable income, predictable hours, the kind of job that doesn't look impressive online but quietly keeps everything running. From the beginning, I carried more. Rent, utilities, groceries. He said brand deals were inconsistent, that things would even out once his momentum hit. I believed him because it felt temporary and because I loved him. I didn't mind being the practical one, at least not at first. The comparison started small. She has such good energy. Some women just know how to be magnetic, always said casually, never directly aimed at me, but always close enough to land. When I asked who he was talking about, he'd shrug and say I was reading into things. Last Thursday night, we were in the kitchen. I'd just received a promotion offer. More responsibility, more pay, something I'd worked toward for years. I tried to share that with him. He barely looked up from his phone. After a few seconds, he asked, "So are you going to be even busier now?" Not congratulations, not pride, just inconvenience. I said probably a bit, but that it was a big step for me. He sighed loudly, the kind of sigh meant to be heard. Then he said something that stuck. I just don't know how that fits into the kind of life I'm trying to build. I asked what he meant. He leaned back, crossed his arms, and said he was in a growth phase, that everything around him needed to feel aligned. Then he mentioned her, the way she moved through rooms, the way people responded to her, the way she didn't make things heavy. "She's just more feminine," he said, like that explained everything. Later that night, lying beside him, while his phone lit up with notifications, I realized something uncomfortable. He wasn't comparing me because he hated me. He was comparing me because he thought I should feel lucky to still be chosen. The breaking point didn't come with a scream. It came on Sunday afternoon. I was looking over our shared expenses and asked if we could talk about finances. He laughed and asked why I was keeping score. I told him I just needed clarity. That's when he said it, casually, without hesitation. "It meant nothing," he said. "She was just better at a few things than you." And something in me went very, very quiet. After he said it, nothing exploded. That was the part that stayed with me. No apology, no backtracking, no attempt to soften the blow. He just went back to his phone like he'd commented on the weather instead of ranking me against another woman. I stood there for a moment longer than necessary, waiting for something, a clarification, a joke reveal, a realization that maybe he'd crossed a line. None of that came. So I closed my laptop, stacked the papers neatly, and went into the bedroom. Not dramatically, not slamming doors, just quietly removing myself from the space where I'd suddenly felt optional. The next few days felt strange, not tense, eroded. The air between us changed in a way I couldn't immediately name. He didn't bring it up again. That told me more than if he had. He acted normal, which in his language meant distracted. He talked about his day, about collaborations, about how exhausting it was to carry conversations with people who didn't get his vision. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't ask if what he'd said had landed. I started noticing how often her name floated through our apartment without ever being spoken directly. He'd reference things she liked, music she listened to, a cafe she loved. He never said she, but I knew exactly who he meant. It was like he was letting the comparison breathe on its own, trusting it would do the work without him having to repeat the sentence. The comments became smaller and more frequent, not insults, observations. You know, some women just know how to walk into a room. It's crazy how confidence changes everything. I wish you didn't overthink things so much. Each one landed gently enough to deny intent, sharp enough to sting. And every time I paused, every time I didn't react, I could feel him watching to see if it worked. I still paid the bills, still ordered groceries, still handled the things that made our life function. That contrast started to feel deliberate. I was the foundation. She was the fantasy. I realized he didn't want me to leave. He wanted me to adjust, to become quieter, lighter, less me. One night, he asked me to help him film something. Just a quick clip. He needed the lighting right, the angle aspirational. I stood there, holding the phone while he adjusted his posture and smile, coaching me on how to make it look effortless. When we were done, he frowned at the screen and said, "She would have known exactly how to frame this." He didn't look at me when he said it. He didn't need to. I handed the phone back and went to the bathroom. I locked the door and sat on the edge of the tub, not crying, just breathing. That was the moment I understood this wasn't about cheating. It was about hierarchy. He needed me to feel smaller so he could feel chosen. The following weekend, we went out with friends. Loud place, performative energy. He was different there, more attentive to everyone except me. When someone complimented him, he soaked it in. When someone spoke to me, he interrupted. At one point, someone joked about how couples evolve. He laughed and said, "Yeah, some people grow faster than others." He glanced at me when he said it, just long enough. On the way home, I asked him if he was unhappy. He sighed like I'd asked something tedious. "Why does everything have to be a problem?" he said. "I'm just being honest. You're the one making it heavy." That was when I realized honesty, to him, meant saying whatever preserved his advantage. I stopped asking questions after that, not out of fear, out of clarity. I started pulling back in small ways he didn't notice right away. I stopped covering extras. I stopped rearranging my schedule around his. I stopped explaining myself when I didn't feel like engaging. He noticed eventually. He always does. "You're being weird," he said one night. "Did I say something that upset you?" I looked at him and almost laughed. The wording. Did I say something? As if words weren't the entire problem. I'm just thinking, I said. He nodded, already bored. "Don't spiral." That was when I understood something quietly devastating. He didn't want a partner. He wanted a setting. Someone stable enough to hold the frame while he auditioned better options. And I was already halfway out the door. The conversation that ended everything didn't sound like a breakup. It didn't even sound emotional. That's what made it so dangerous. It sounded practical. It was Sunday afternoon. Quiet. The kind of quiet where you can hear the refrigerator hum and the neighbors moving upstairs. He was on the couch with his laptop open, phone balanced on his knee, switching between tabs without really focusing on any of them. I was at the table with our shared expenses pulled up, not because I wanted to argue, but because my checking account had been shrinking in a way that didn't make sense anymore. I asked him if we could talk about finances for a minute. He didn't look up. "Make it quick." That should have been my cue to stop, but I didn't. I told him I'd noticed I was covering almost everything now. Rent, utilities, groceries, subscriptions, even things he said he'd get later. I wasn't accusing him. I wasn't emotional. I was asking where we stood. He closed his laptop with a sharp snap and finally looked at me, visibly irritated. "Why are you keeping score?" "I'm not," I said. "I just need clarity." He laughed, not a friendly laugh, a dismissive one. "You knew who I was when we started dating." That line again. The universal deflection. I reminded him that supporting him hadn't bothered me at first, but partnerships need balance, transparency, a plan. He shook his head like I was missing something obvious. "This is why you don't understand women like her," he said. I felt my stomach drop. "Who?" He leaned back against the counter and said it, clearly, calmly, without hesitation. "Her. She just doesn't make things heavy. She gets it. She's better at some things than you are." There it was again. Not louder, not crueler, just clearer. I asked him if anything had happened between them. He rolled his eyes. "Why does it always go there with you?" "Nothing happened." That wasn't a no. Then he added, almost kindly, "You should be secure enough not to feel threatened." That was the moment something in me went completely still. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I just said, "Then let her be better at paying your bills too." He froze. For the first time in months, he looked genuinely confused, like he was waiting for the punchline and couldn't find it. "Are you serious right now?" he asked. I nodded. Not smugly, not dramatically, just done. He laughed again, defensive this time. "Wow, so you're punishing me now?" "I'm setting boundaries," I said. "Something you keep telling me I need to learn." He scoffed. "You're being emotional." That was his favorite word whenever he didn't want to take responsibility. I told him I was going for a walk. I needed air. He told me not to be dramatic. I grabbed my jacket anyway. While I was outside, my phone buzzed. Not from him, from my boss. He asked if I'd had time to think about the promotion, said they needed an answer by Monday. The role would require relocating for a bit. Different office, bigger scope. He said, "This is one of those opportunities people regret passing up." I stood on the sidewalk for a long time after that call ended. When I got back to the apartment, he was filming a story in the mirror. Ring light on. Music playing. He glanced at me through the phone screen and mouthed, "1 second." I waited. He finished, smiled at himself, then turned to me like we were resuming a paused argument. "So," he said, "are you done sulking?" That was when I realized he wasn't scared of losing me. He was annoyed that I wasn't behaving predictably. I asked him a simple question. If I stopped paying for things tomorrow, what would happen? He frowned. Why would you do that? I'm asking hypothetically. He crossed his arms. You wouldn't. You're not that kind of woman. Not you couldn't. You wouldn't. That was when I understood how he saw me. Not as a girlfriend. As infrastructure. That night, while he slept, I opened my laptop and reread the promotion details. Then I opened our lease agreement. Month to month. 30 days notice. My name on everything. I didn't feel angry. I felt calm. The kind of calm that only shows up when a decision has already been made somewhere deep inside you. By morning, he was still asleep, and I was already planning my exit. I didn't tell him right away. That wasn't manipulation. That was self-preservation. I needed to know whether I was reacting or finally responding. So for the next few days, I acted normal. Not affectionate, not cold, neutral. I went to work, came home, cooked for myself, paid nothing extra. Let the quiet do what arguing never could. He noticed, of course. He always noticed changes in attention. You're being weird, he said one night while scrolling through comments. Did I say something that upset you? The phrasing almost made me smile. Did I say something? As if the words had floated out accidentally instead of landing exactly where they were meant to. I'm just busy, I said. He nodded, already disengaging. Don't get in your head too much. That's when you spiral. 2 days later, I gave my boss my answer. Yes, I'd take the promotion. Temporary relocation, immediate start, bigger scope, more responsibility. Everything moved faster after that. Like once I decided, the world stopped waiting for me to catch up. That same afternoon, I emailed our property manager and gave notice. 30 days, clean, legal, my name removed, utilities transferred, internet canceled, everything tied to me quietly detached. I didn't tell him yet. I wanted to see how long he'd stay comfortable without knowing the ground was already shifting. The first sign came sooner than I expected. The grocery delivery didn't arrive. He complained about it while I made coffee. Did you forget to reorder? He asked. No, I said. I didn't forget. He looked up. What does that mean? It means I didn't reorder. He stared at me like he was waiting for the rest of the sentence. There wasn't one. So you're going to... No. His jaw tightened. Catherine, what is this? A reality, I said. You said she was better at some things. I figured this was a good time to stop competing. He laughed, but it sounded thin. You're being petty. I'm being consistent. That night, he ordered takeout. On his card. I heard him sigh when the total popped up. The next morning, he asked if I'd already paid rent for the upcoming month. I haven't, I said. His head snapped up. What? I gave notice. That was the first time I saw panic flicker across his face. Not fear. Panic. Calculating panic. You can't just do that, he said. We live here for now, I replied. He stared at me like I'd broken a rule he thought was unbreakable. Once the panic set in, he tried a different approach. He got nice. Not genuinely nice. Strategically nice. The next morning, he made coffee for both of us. He even used my mug, the one he always said ruined his aesthetic. He asked how work was going, asked if I slept okay, touched my arm as he passed me in the kitchen, like muscle memory might do the work for him. You've been really distant, he said softly. I don't like it when we're like this. We again. I'm preparing for a move, I said. He blinked. A move? The promotion requires relocation, temporarily. His smile froze. You never mentioned that. I mentioned the promotion, I said. You didn't ask questions. That landed. He sat down across from me and leaned forward. Let's not do anything rash, he said. You're overreacting to one conversation. One conversation, I repeated. He waved his hand. You know what I mean. You're letting your ego get bruised, and now you're trying to prove a point. I asked him a simple question. If I hadn't overheard your comparison, if I just kept paying and smiling, would you have ever told me? He hesitated. That pause told me everything. He switched tactics again. You're really going to throw this away over jealousy? No, I said. I'm walking away because I realized I'm optional to you as a person, but essential as a resource. His face hardened. That's unfair. When was the last time you planned something for us, I asked, or posted me, or asked how I was doing without needing something? He stood up abruptly. This is exhausting. You're rewriting history. No, I said. I'm finally reading it clearly. That night, he slept facing away from me, phone glowing in the dark. I heard him typing long messages. Damage control. Replacement sourcing. I didn't care anymore. The next morning, he asked if she could come by later to talk things out. I almost laughed. And no, I said, she can help you pack instead. That was when he snapped. You think you're so superior, he said. But without me, you're just another boring woman with a paycheck. I looked at him and I felt nothing. No, I said calmly. Without you, I'm peaceful. He didn't have a response for that. And that was when real silence entered the apartment. The apartment didn't explode after that. It emptied. He moved through the space like someone who hated the other roommate but couldn't afford to leave yet. Cabinets closed harder than necessary. Dishes left in the sink like punctuation. Little sighs whenever I entered a room, as if my presence was an inconvenience he hadn't budgeted for. 2 days later, the first bill bounced. I knew because he asked. Hey, he said from the couch, trying to sound casual. Did you change something with the internet? It's not working. I canceled it, I replied, tying my shoes. His head snapped up. What do you mean canceled? I told you, I'm detaching my accounts. You can't just, Catherine, I need that. I work online. I paused at the door and looked at him. Then you should probably make sure the person who gets you covers it. That set him off. He followed me into the hallway, voice raised but measured, careful not to sound unhinged. You're doing this to hurt me. No, I said, I'm doing this to stop hurting myself. He laughed bitterly. So this is what you do when you don't get your way. You run. I turned back to him. No, I leave when I realize I'm being tolerated, not valued. That night I packed quietly. Essentials only. Clothes, documents, laptop, things that belonged to me long before him. He watched from the doorway, arms crossed, eyes sharp. You think you're winning, he said, but you'll regret this. You don't just walk away from a woman like her. I'm not walking away from her, I said, zipping the bag. I'm walking toward myself. That was when his voice cracked. Where am I supposed to go? I looked at him for a long moment. You said it yourself, I replied. It meant nothing. She was just better at a few things than me. I picked up my keys and left him standing there, surrounded by ring lights, half-packed brand deals, and a silence he'd never bothered to prepare for. I didn't look back. The silence after I left wasn't dramatic. No frantic calls, no chase down the stairs, just quiet. I stayed with a coworker the first night, slept on a couch, woke up before my alarm, like my body already knew the routine had changed. My phone had a few messages from him. Not apologies, logistics. Did you take the router? When is the last payment for rent actually due? Can you forward the property manager's email? I answered once, briefly, factually. Then I stopped. The promotion paperwork went through faster than I expected. HR sent timelines, travel details, temporary housing. It felt surreal how quickly my life reorganized itself once I removed the thing weighing it down. 3 days later, he finally called. I let it ring once, twice, picked up on the third. His voice sounded different. Not sharp, not superior, tired. I didn't think you'd actually do it, he said. I know, I replied. There was a long pause. Then he said, she thinks you're being dramatic. I smiled. Not happily, confirmed. I'm sure she does. He exhaled hard. I just didn't think you'd disappear. I didn't disappear, I said. I stopped filling the gaps. Another pause, then softer. I thought you understood your role. That sentence told me everything I needed to know. I did, I said. That's why I left. The call ended without ceremony. No goodbye, no anger. Just two people realizing the transaction had concluded. A week later, I drove past the apartment to grab the last of my mail. His car was gone. The lights were off. A notice was taped to the door. Something official, something unavoidable. I didn't feel smug. I felt light. When the noise finally stopped, I realized I hadn't lost anything. I'd just stopped paying for someone else's illusion. I'm writing this from a hotel room that smells like new carpet and bad coffee. The promotion started immediately. New city, new office, new badge. Same me, but lighter. No constant tension. No calculating someone else's mood. No wondering if my usefulness outweighed my presence. A week into the role, HR asked if I wanted to make the relocation permanent. I said yes without hesitation. That night, I got one last message from him. Not angry, not apologetic, confused. I don't get how you could walk away so easily. I stared at it for a while before replying. I didn't walk away easily, I wrote. I walked away quietly. There's a difference. He didn't respond. Later, scrolling out of habit, I saw her post, a solo mirror selfie, a caption about rebirth and protecting her energy, comments full of fire emojis and men asking if she was single. I didn't feel anything. That's the part people don't talk about. They expect rage or heartbreak or regret. But sometimes when something ends exactly when it should, all that's left is calm. I canceled the last shared subscription the next morning. close the chapter completely. So here's why I'm sharing this. Not for validation, not for revenge, for perspective. If someone tells you another woman is better than you, believe them. Then let her take over everything, not just the parts that look exciting. Love isn't proven by endurance. It's proven by mutual respect. And the moment you realize you're being kept for convenience instead of chosen with intention, that's not a relationship anymore. That's a lease, and leases can be terminated. Thanks for reading.